Daniel Carter leaned on the kitchen counter, eyeing his daughter Sophie. 16, eyes glued to her phone, barely touched the sandwich he made. She was distant lately, emotionally checked out. "You came home late last night?" he asked casually while slicing an apple for Claire, his youngest, who was drawing at the table. Sophie didn't look up. "I just watched a movie at Caitlin's." "Around 11? "Probably," she mumbled, tugging at her earlobe. Subtle, but Daniel noticed. He'd seen that gesture before. Not from her, but from Mark. His old friend used to scratch his ear whenever he lied. "I swear I heard the door close closer to 1, he said, keeping his tone light. She rolled her eyes. "Maybe it was Ethan. He wanders." Claire looked up. "Ethan was brushing his teeth at 9! Sophie shot her a glare and buried herself back in the screen. Daniel didn't push, but the ear thing stuck with him. It was nothing, or it wasn't. Then Ethan came in, hair messy, sketchbook in hand. He went straight to the fridge. "You just ate," Daniel said. "I'm thinking," Ethan muttered, settling in with a soda and starting a new drawing, skyscrapers and streets. He'd been drawing since he was a toddler. Daniel always saw himself in that quiet creativity. "What's on your mind?" he asked. "School, I guess." Daniel let it go. Ethan, like Sophie, kept things in. Claire was the only one still fully present, humming, smiling, tossing an apple slice into her mouth. He looked at his kids. Same house, same table, but all in their own little worlds. Something was off. Maybe just life with teens, or maybe not. Lydia stepped in from the garage, heels clicking, phone in one hand, purse in the other. She looked sharp, gray suit, hair in a tight bun, that polished smile she always wore after work. "Hey, everyone," she called, tossing her bag on the counter. "How was your day?" Daniel, drying his hands, offered a neutral, "Okay, you?" She lit up. "Closed a house in Westlake, 5 beds, pool, full hill view, they're thrilled." He nodded, managing a smile. "Nice. You've been on fire lately." Lydia slipped off her jacket, gave Sophie a playful jab about being glued to her phone, admired Claire's drawing, complimented Ethan's sketch, then turned to Daniel. "What's for dinner?" "Pizza." "Perfect," she said, giving his hand a gentle squeeze. Daniel smiled faintly. Almost 20 years together, and despite everything, despite the cracks, there was still a strange comfort in her touch. But then it happened again. Sophie scratched her ear, just like Mark used to when he lied. "Dad?" Sophie's voice cut in. "You okay?" "Yeah," he said quickly. "Just thinking." Later, after dinner, Lydia read in bed. The kids disappeared into their rooms. Daniel sat alone in the dark living room, the scent of pizza still hanging in the air. He stared at the blank TV screen, catching his reflection. Tired, older than his 42 years. Silence usually calmed him. Not tonight. His thoughts spun back to Sophie's gesture. Mark's old tell, that itch, that grin, that lie about the frat guy and the $100, same scratch, same bluff. He shook it off. Coincidence, right? But the itch in his mind wouldn't go away. He stood, walked to the bookcase, and pulled out an old photo album. Dusty, unused. From when things felt real. There they were, he and Lydia, young and laughing in their first backyard. Mark, behind the camera, yelling, "Smile, you idiot!" Flipped the page. Sophie, age 2, digging in the garden. Chubby cheeks, bright green eyes. Wait, green! Lydia's eyes were blue. His were brown. He frowned. Was there anyone in their families with green eyes? He couldn't think of one. More pages. Baby Ethan. Green eyes, too, eventually. He stared at their faces. Sophie's chin, Ethan's cheekbones. Familiar in a way that stung. His pulse quickened. No, it's nothing. He was just tired. But then he grabbed another album. This one full of shots with Mark. Campfires, parties, lake trips. He opened to a random page and froze. Mark smiling, beer in hand, scratching his ear. Green eyes gleaming. Daniel felt the ground shift beneath him. Daniel stared at the photo in his hands, Mark grinning by the fire, beer in one hand, scratching his ear with the other. That old tell again. He remembered that night. Mark had come back from a fishing trip claiming he caught a monster. Everyone knew he came back empty-handed, but he stuck to the story, scratching his ear and grinning. They roasted him for it until sunrise. Daniel glanced at his reflection in the cabinet glass. His face was rounder, his eyes brown, eyebrows thick. He didn't look anything like Mark. But Sophie, Ethan. He grabbed the other album, the family one, and flipped to a photo of Sophie at 5, grinning with a crooked smile and a dimple on her right cheek, just like Mark's. His stomach dropped. He set the albums down and stumbled to the kitchen, pouring a glass of water with trembling hands. It couldn't be. Lydia and Mark? No. That was impossible. He would have known. They'd all been close for years. Mark, his best friend, Sophie's godfather, the guy who helped move their furniture, who always brought whiskey to Thanksgiving and told the same dumb jokes. But memories started hitting him in waves. The time Lydia and Mark got stranded in Houston together. Mark picking Sophie up from daycare. Lydia laughing just a little too hard at Mark's stories. They were little things until now. Daniel clenched the glass tighter. He didn't want this to be real. But the photos sat like evidence, waiting for him to stop lying to himself. He returned to the living room and tore through more pictures. Kindergarten graduation, Ethan's first school day, Claire as a newborn. Her eyes were blue, like Lydia's. Not green. That gave him some relief. At least Claire wasn't part of this nightmare. He closed the album and leaned back, eyes shut, heart racing. Midnight ticked past. The house was silent, but his mind was screaming. Do I confront her? Call Mark? Or pretend I never saw any of this? He whispered. But the pieces wouldn't stop clicking into place. Sophie's ear scratch, those green eyes, that damn dimple. He put the albums away, turned off the lights, and checked on each of his kids. Sophie curled up with her phone. Ethan asleep with his sketchbook beside him, Claire hugging her stuffed bunny. They were his whole world. He barely slept. By morning, Lydia was already up, the shower running. Daniel lay in bed staring at the ceiling. His head was pounding. The night felt like a weight pressing down on his chest. Then it hit him. Houston, 10 years ago. Mark had invited Lydia to a car show. Daniel was supposed to meet them later, but stayed back to finish work. A storm hit, roads flooded, and they called to say they were stuck in a motel. Lydia complained about being bored. Mark joked about wet boots. He'd believed every word. Now he didn't. The water stopped. He heard the hairdryer. Her phone sat on the nightstand, familiar, cracked in the corner. Without thinking, he grabbed it and unlocked it. Same old password. Sophie's birthday. He opened the messages. There were the usual ones. Clients, friends, a text from him about milk. And then, Mark. His heart froze. He opened the thread. It was all still there. Long, careless messages. Meet me at the Red Rose on Friday. Tell him you've got a showing. Daniel blinked. The Red Rose. A motel outside of town. She'd said she had a late appointment that night. He'd believed her. Then more. I love it when you're around, but I have to be careful. Come after work. Say the docs ran late. He won't ask. Heart emojis, kisses, smiley faces. His stomach turned. This wasn't a fling. This was a second life. A betrayal so deep it felt like a joke. And he had been the punchline. The bathroom door creaked open. He threw the phone back on the nightstand. Lydia walked out in a towel, her hair wet, smiling like nothing had changed. Morning, sleepyhead, she said. Rough night? Didn't sleep much. She slipped into a dress, still humming. Poor baby. Can you make coffee? I've got an early meeting. He nodded, not looking at her. Rage and disbelief boiled beneath the surface. How could he have missed it? 20 years, 3 kids, hundreds of dinners, thousands of lies. She and Mark, his wife and his best friend, had been playing him for a fool all along. Daniel stared out the kitchen window as the coffee brewed. Everything outside looked normal. Dog walkers, mail deliveries, but inside his world had flipped. It all started to add up now. Lydia's business trips, Mark offering her rides when Daniel worked late. All the puzzle pieces he had ignored were suddenly snapping into place. Lydia came down, fully dressed and ready to go, heels clicking. She grabbed the mug he poured, kissed his cheek, and smiled like nothing had changed. Thanks, honey. See you tonight. Yeah, he muttered, not looking up. She left. The door slammed, and Daniel stood there numb. How had he been so blind? At his desk, blueprints for a new home sat untouched. On his screen was a confirmation. 4 DNA kits ordered. His, Sophie's, Ethan's, Claire's, rush delivery. He couldn't wait anymore. He needed the truth. He leaned back, rubbed his face. Lydia's text with Mark had already shattered his trust. This would tell him whether his life had been a complete lie, or just mostly. DNA didn't lie, and once he knew, he'd figure out what to do. He moved through the house like a ghost. Sophie was showering. He stepped into her room and spotted a comb on the floor. He took a few strands of hair, slipped them in his pocket. Downstairs, Ethan sat sketching. What are you drawing? Daniel asked. Just some cars, the boy muttered, not looking up. Daniel casually brushed a few hairs off Ethan's cap and kept moving. Claire was in her room, playing with dolls. Daniel knelt beside her. Can I fix your hair, princess? She giggled and nodded. He ran her comb through her ponytail, collecting a few blonde strands. In the bedroom, he added his own hair to 4 Ziploc bags, labeled each DSEC, then zipped them into his jacket. But he couldn't sit with this alone. He called Rachel, his sister, a nurse. "Dan?" she answered on the second ring, tired but alert. "I think Lydia's been cheating with Mark, and I don't think the kids are mine." Silence. "You serious?" she finally said. "That's nuclear. I found messages. They've been lying for years. I ordered tests, hair samples, sending them tomorrow." "Dan, if even one isn't yours, hell, if none are, that changes everything." "I know," he said. "But I need answers." "Okay," she exhaled. "But once you know, there's no going back." "I don't care. I need the truth." Rachel's voice softened. "I've got your back. Just don't do anything reckless, all right?" "I'll try," he said, knowing full well it was a lie. "Call me when you know. And Dan, if they really did this, I'll liquidate them myself." He laughed weakly. "Thanks, Rach. You're the best." Obviously. They hung up. Daniel stared at the jacket with the samples. He felt like a spy in his own house. But this had to be done. He needed proof. Downstairs, Lydia called up. "Dan, I'm back. Got Chinese." He stuffed the jacket away and headed to the kitchen. She was unpacking takeout like it was any normal day. "How was your day?" she asked, handing him chopsticks. "Fine," he said, avoiding eye contact. "I might hit my bonus this month." "Cool," he muttered, opening the box but not tasting a thing. Later, he stood at the grill flipping ribs for a weekend barbecue. The backyard smelled like summer, smoke, grass, grilled meat. Guests would arrive soon. From the outside, everything still looked perfect. But Daniel knew the truth was on its way, and it would burn everything down. Daniel hosted a backyard cookout that Saturday. Mark and Jessica came, along with Lydia's co-workers and a few neighbors. The kids ran wild. Sophie by the pool with a friend, Ethan tossing a ball, Claire splashing in a kiddie pool. Everything looked perfect, but Daniel was holding back a storm. The day before, he'd mailed off the DNA samples. It had taken minutes, hair into envelopes, a stop at the post office while Lydia was at a client meeting. Now all that was left was the wait. A week, maybe less, and every second of it was clawing at his nerves. He hadn't slept, couldn't stop replaying those texts. Sophie's green eyes, that ear scratch. At the snack table, Lydia laughed at something Mark said. She looked radiant. Sundress, hair down, lemonade in hand. Mark, casual in shorts and a t-shirt, leaned in close, beer in hand, telling one of his animated stories. Daniel watched from behind the grill. Their chemistry wasn't subtle anymore. Mark cracked a joke, slapped his knee, and Lydia threw her head back, laughing too loud, too long. Her hand grazed his shoulder and didn't move right away. Then Mark looked at her, smirked, and winked. Daniel gripped the tongs until they cut into his palm. They weren't just old friends. Not anymore. Maybe not ever. The texts echoed in his head. "I love it when you're around." How many times had they done this in front of him? Smiled, flirted, lied? "Dan, ribs are burning," Jessica called, walking over with a tray of pies. He snapped out of it and flipped the meat. "Thanks," he muttered. "You're quiet today." "Just tired," he lied. She smiled and drifted back to the others. Daniel glanced back at Mark and Lydia. They had split up, just enough not to raise suspicion. But that earlier touch still hung in the air. And now he noticed everything. How Mark watched Sophie a moment too long as she passed. How Lydia's eyes drifted toward Mark when she thought no one saw. How they finished each other's sentences like it was second nature. He'd been blind, but not anymore. He called out, "Food's ready!" Guests gathered. Kids cheered. Daniel sat next to Lydia but barely said a word. She chatted with a neighbor while he watched Mark across the table, smiling, laughing, toasting. "For you, Dan," Mark grinned, lifting his beer. "Best grill master in Austin." Daniel nodded, tight smile hiding fury. In his head, he saw himself flipping the table, breaking Mark's smug face. He didn't. The evening wound down. Guests left. Kids disappeared inside. Mark and Jessica were last to go. "Great day, brother," Mark said, clapping Daniel on the back. "We'll do this again soon." Daniel forced a smile. "Yeah, real soon." As darkness fell, he cleared the table alone under the stars, his rage simmering just beneath the surface. The results came a week later. Daniel sat at his desk, staring at the email. DNA analysis results. He opened the PDF. Sophie Carter, 0% match. Ethan Carter, 0% match. Claire Carter, 99.9% match. He read it again. Sophie and Ethan, Mark's kids. Only Claire was truly his. It hit like a gut punch, like the floor vanished beneath him. He couldn't move, could barely breathe. The numbers screamed at him from the screen, 0%, 0%, 99.9%, and confirmed what he already knew in his gut. Lydia and Mark hadn't just betrayed him. They'd stolen his life. He stumbled to the window. Outside, the world carried on. Kids riding bikes, the sun shining like nothing happened. But inside him, chaos. His fists clenched, his jaw locked. How could they do this? He thought of Sophie's tells, Ethan's green eyes, their laughter at the grill like it was all a joke. His love, his trust, turned into a long, cruel lie. And now the truth was in his hands. And they had no idea what was coming next. They weren't his by blood. But Daniel had raised Sophie and Ethan. He taught them to ride bikes, read them bedtime stories, kissed scraped knees. Mark might be their biological father, but Daniel was the one who'd shown up. And Lydia? She wasn't keeping the kids just to keep the lie alive. He wouldn't give up any of them, not without a fight. Daniel grabbed his phone and dialed Tom Grayson, his lawyer and longtime friend. Tom was brutal in court and loyal where it counted. Dan, what's up? Tom answered, voice gravelly but alert. I need a divorce, Daniel said flatly, and full custody of the kids. There was a pause. What happened? Lydia's been sleeping with Mark for years. DNA test just came back. Sophie and Ethan aren't mine. Claire is. Jesus. Tom let out a long breath. You sure about the results? 0% match. Twice. Claire's mine, 99.9. No room for doubt. Tom shifted gears fast. All right. We file for divorce citing infidelity. The DNA test gives us ground. Custody's tricky, but since you raised the kids, you've got a case. I want child support from both of them. Done, Tom said. We sue Lydia. Name Mark as the father. Might need a second test, but no problem. Do you want to do this quietly or blow it up? Daniel thought of the plan forming in his head. The party. The reveal. Quiet for now. Prep the paperwork. I'll decide when and how to serve it. Got it. Come by tomorrow. Don't do anything stupid before then. I won't, Daniel lied. He hung up and stared at the phone. His hands shook. Everything was crumbling. But he wasn't. Not yet. He heard the front door open. Dan, I'm home, Lydia called. Got groceries. Can you help? He shut the laptop, slid the DNA report into a drawer, and straightened his face. He walked downstairs, took the bags from her hands, smiled like everything was fine. Of course, he said, looking her dead in the eyes. She smiled, clueless. Inside, Daniel burned. The next morning, he stood at the kitchen island, coffee untouched, mind racing. Rage no longer simmered. It blazed. The divorce was coming, but that wasn't enough. Lydia and Mark hadn't just betrayed him. They humiliated him, lied to his face, built a life on his back. He needed more than justice. He wanted exposure. The barbecue idea became something new, something sharper, a trap. He named it The Opening of Spring. Clean, cheerful, harmless, perfect cover. He pictured it all, their laughter, the clinking of glasses, and then the reveal, the gasps, the silence. Lydia frozen. Mark choking on beer. This wasn't just a breakup. It would be a public reckoning. He opened his phone and started crafting the guest list. First on it, Mark and Jessica. Jessica deserved to know the truth, too. Then, Mark's employees. Tony the manager, Rick the mechanic, a few sales guys. All loyal to Mark. They'd get front row seats. Then Lydia's circle. Sarah, Kate, top-tier agents, always flaunting success in family life. And family, of course. Rachel, Lydia's parents, even Mark's aunt, who never shut up about him. 50 people. Enough for a scene. He sent Mark a message first. Hey bro, throwing a surprise opening of spring party this Saturday. Bring Jess. Tell the crew. Tony, Rick, whoever. Starts at 6. Be there. Mark replied fast. Awesome, we're in. What's the occasion? Daniel smiled at the screen. Spring. Then he copied and pasted the invite to the rest. Surprise party, Saturday, 6 p.m. Our place, don't miss it. To Rachel, he sent one line. You know why? Just be there. She responded with a fist emoji. She knew. And soon, they all would. Lydia strolled into the kitchen just as Daniel drained the last of his coffee. She was flushed from her morning run, her face glowing with sweat and satisfaction. She looked energized, carefree. It made his blood boil. Morning, she said cheerfully, grabbing water from the fridge. You were up early. Didn't sleep, he replied, eyes steady on her. Had business on my mind. Oh, poor thing, she smiled. We should do something fun this weekend to clear our heads. Daniel nearly laughed at that. Almost. Instead, he smiled and delivered the bait. I already planned something. A little surprise, spring kickoff party, Saturday night. Everyone's invited. Mark, your friends, your family. I want to celebrate all your recent wins. Lydia lit up. You're serious? That's so sweet. She rushed over and hugged him, face pressed to his chest. You're the best husband in the world, she said. The lie stung, but Daniel hugged her back, holding her just a second too long. I'm glad you like it, he said coolly. It's going to be unforgettable. Oh, I know, she giggled, sipping her water. I'll need a new dress. I'll call Sarah and Kate. They'll love it. I already invited them, he said casually. Mark and Jess, too, even his crew from the dealership. Perfect, she beamed. It'll be just like old times. Mark and I always got the party going. Daniel clenched his jaw but forced a grin. Yeah, you two are a great team. She blew him a kiss and disappeared into the shower, humming like nothing in the world could touch her. Daniel stared after her, jaw tight, fists clenched. Let her enjoy the fantasy. He moved to the living room, grabbed a notebook, and started planning. Catering, handled, drinks, stocked, music, ready. The final piece, the reveal. Tom would bring the papers, divorce, custody, DNA results, maybe even Lydia's old messages if Daniel dug them up. It wouldn't be a scene, it would be a reckoning, and everyone would witness it. He imagined her face, twisted in disbelief. Mark stammering, Jessica storming out, Lydia's mask finally breaking. He shut the notebook and took a deep breath. It was all in motion now. The next day, Daniel sat at his desk, staring at his phone. Everything was locked in. Food, drinks, guests. The stage was set. He dialed Tom. Dan, Tom answered. Everything's ready. What's the play? I want you at the party, Daniel said, fingers tapping the desk. 6 o'clock. Come at 7. Bring the papers. Serve them in front of everyone. Tom let out a low whistle. You sure? That's not a party. That's a spectacle. I'm sure. She cheated for years. 2 of the kids are Mark's. I'm done. I want the truth out, and I want them exposed. Tom didn't hesitate. Then that's what we'll do. I'll bring everything. Divorce petition, custody filings, child support claim, DNA results. I'll walk in and hand it over like a pro. Daniel nodded. Good. Be ready. Around 50 people. Friends, family, co-workers. Tom laughed. This is going to be legendary. Anything else? No, just be there. Copy that. See you tomorrow. Daniel ended the call. The legal part was ready. But he wanted more than a confrontation. He wanted documentation. He opened his laptop and searched for a local videographer. After a short scroll, he found Eric, a freelancer with solid reviews and clean sample reels. Perfect. He called. Eric speaking. Hey, I'm Daniel Carter. Need someone to shoot a party tomorrow? 6 to 9. You available? Tomorrow. Yeah, I'm free. What kind of party? Spring-themed, family thing, Daniel said smoothly. Just capture the vibe. Guests, toasts, whatever happens. Cool, I'm in. $100 an hour. 3 hours, $300 flat. Done. One thing, don't stop filming, no matter what. Got it. Address? Daniel sent the info and ended the call. He leaned back in his chair, exhaled, and stared at the ceiling. Tomorrow was showtime. The videographer was more than just a nice touch. It was insurance. Eric would be there to catch everything. The moment Tom handed Lydia the divorce papers, her face draining, Mark scrambling for words. It wouldn't just be payback. It would be evidence. If things ended up in court, that footage would bury them. Maybe Daniel would even post it online. Let the whole city see the truth about Lydia Carter and Mark Reynolds. He stepped into the living room. Lydia was curled on the sofa, flipping through a magazine. She looked up with a soft smile. You're really into this party, she said. Everything on track? Yeah. Daniel sat beside her. I want it to be perfect for you. Ah, she reached for his hand. I told Sarah and Kate. They're excited. And Mark called. He's bringing Jess and the guys. It's going to be great. Daniel smiled, but inside, everything recoiled. She had no idea what she was walking into. I've got catering set. Drinks are in the garage, he added. And I hired a videographer. Seriously? She lit up. That's almost over the top, like a wedding. He shrugged. I want it to be memorable. You're amazing, she said, kissing his cheek before turning back to her magazine. He watched her, relaxed, happy, and felt his anger settle into something colder. She thought this was her party. Let her. Tomorrow, she'd realize it was her reckoning. By Friday afternoon, Austin was glowing in late sunlight. Tomorrow at 6 p.m., the opening of spring would begin. 50 guests, a camera, and a manila envelope full of destruction. But for today, Daniel needed quiet. He packed a bag with snacks and water and called out, "Sophie, Ethan, Claire, let's go." "Park time!" Lydia was at a client meeting. He didn't bother wondering if that was true. Sophie came down first, already glued to her phone. "Dad, really? I'm 16. A park?" She rolled her eyes, but followed him out anyway. "Fresh air's good," Daniel said lightly. Ethan appeared next, silent, sketchbook in hand. Claire bounded down last in a yellow dress, holding a rubber ball. "Are we going to play?" Daniel smiled, his first real one all week. "Of course." They drove to Zilker Park and found a quiet spot by the river. Sophie claimed a bench and scrolled. Ethan sat up under a tree and started sketching. Claire tugged Daniel's hand and they began tossing the ball. Her laughter was bright, sharp. He watched her, the hair, the eyes, the smile, and felt the weight in his chest. She was his. DNA confirmed it, but Sophie and Ethan... He glanced at them, her scrolling, him sketching, and thought of every scraped knee, every school night, every bedtime story. He raised them. They were his. Biology didn't matter. Claire caught the ball, then paused. "Dad, are you sad?" He froze. He'd worn a smile all week. But Claire, his youngest, saw through it. He crouched down. "Not sad, just tired. Work stuff, you know." "You always say that when you're sad." She frowned. "Is it because of Mom?" That one hit like a punch. He hesitated, then shook his head. "No, just grown-up stuff. But listen," he took her hands. "No matter what happens, I'm always here. For you, for Sophie, for Ethan. That's a promise." She searched his face, then nodded. "Okay, I believe you." She hugged him tight. He held her, holding on to that moment like it mattered more than anything else. He wouldn't let them take her, or the others. Not a chance. "Let's keep playing," he said, pulling back. Claire smiled and tossed the ball, and for a moment he forgot what waited on the other side of tomorrow, but only for a moment. Half an hour later, Sophie approached. "Caitlin wants to hang. Can I go?" "Yeah," he said. "We're heading out." He gathered Ethan, who silently closed his sketchbook. Claire chattered on the ride home. Sophie texted. Ethan stared out the window. This was his family, no matter what the test said. Not Lydia, not Mark. At home, Sophie left for Caitlin's. Ethan retreated to his room. Claire curled up with a cartoon. Daniel walked into the garage, scanning the coolers and decorations. Everything was ready. Food, papers, camera. He could already see it. Lydia laughing with guests, Mark slapping him on the back. Then the silence. The fallout. It would hit like a bomb, but right now, stillness. The last breath before the storm. Lydia came home late. The kids were already asleep. She walked into the bedroom where Daniel lay in bed with a book, pretending to read, pretending everything was fine. "Long day?" she asked, slipping off her sneakers. He shut the book. "Big day tomorrow." She smiled as she climbed into bed beside him. "I can't wait. Thank you for putting it all together. You really are the best." "I'm doing my best," he replied, staring up at the ceiling. She had no clue this was her last night in the house as his wife. Tomorrow would change everything. He turned away from her and closed his eyes. The calm had ended. The storm was near. By 6 p.m. Saturday, Daniel Carter's backyard was buzzing. String lights glowed overhead. The buffet tables were loaded with food, ribs, burgers, fresh salads, and coolers in the garage overflowed with drinks. Over 50 guests had shown up. Mark's co-workers from the dealership, Lydia's friends, neighbors, and relatives. Everything was in place. Daniel stood near the entrance, greeting guests with a tight, polite smile. On the surface, he was a perfect host. Underneath, he was a grenade with the pin already pulled. This wasn't a party. It was a trap. Mark and Jessica were the first to arrive. Mark stepped out in jeans and a rolled-up button-down, carrying his usual bottle of whiskey. Jessica, in a floral dress, balanced a tray of pies. Mark clapped Daniel on the back. "You really went all out, man." "Where's the beer?" "In the garage," Daniel said calmly. "Help yourself." Jessica wandered off to join the others. Mark lingered a beat longer. "Lydia around?" "She's getting ready," Daniel said, hands clenched in his pockets. "She'll be out soon." Mark nodded and moved toward the crowd. Soon came Mark's crew. Tony, the dealership manager, Rick, the tattooed mechanic, and a few young salesmen. Loud and full of stories, they brought more beer and energy. Daniel gave them directions to the buffet. Lydia's circle showed up next. Sarah and Kate in bright dresses, already giggling over their first glasses of wine. They gushed over the lights and decorations. "Dan, this looks amazing," Sarah said, throwing her arms around him. "Lydia's lucky to have you." He forced a smile. "I try." Guests kept arriving. The Johnsons with their kids, old Mrs., Kelly nibbling on ribs, Lydia's parents in from Dallas, Mark's chatty aunt rambling about back in the day. Rachel showed up last. She caught Daniel's eye and gave him a silent nod. She knew exactly what was coming. At 7:30, Lydia finally appeared. The yard quieted. She wore a sleek red dress, hair down, makeup soft and elegant. Applause broke out. Someone whistled. She beamed, waved, and walked straight to Daniel. "You outdid yourself," she said, kissing his cheek. "This is beautiful." "I did it for you," he replied, looking straight at her. She missed the steel in his tone. Her smile was warm. It made him sick. Eric, the young videographer, had already set up his camera. He moved like a ghost, capturing everything. The laughter, the kids, the food. Daniel walked up beside him. "Keep it rolling, especially during speeches. Don't stop." "You got it," Eric said, focused on his lens. The party picked up. Music pumped through the speakers. Classic rock, a little country. Sophie laughed near the pool. Ethan sat alone with his sketch pad. Claire ran barefoot with other kids. Daniel stayed alert, watching only two people, Lydia and Mark. They were near the drinks, just a few steps apart. Lydia held wine. Mark had a beer. He leaned toward her and said something that made her laugh. Her fingers grazed his arm, quick but intimate. Then he winked. She gave the tiniest nod. Their gazes lingered too long. Their conversations were too comfortable. They weren't just chatting. Daniel squeezed his plastic cup until it cracked. Rachel appeared next to him and laid a steady hand on his shoulder. "You okay?" she asked. "Barely," he muttered. "They're making it too easy." "It'll be over soon," she whispered. "Tom's still coming at 7?" Daniel checked his watch and gave a small nod. The rest of the party stayed clueless. Tony told a loud joke to a group of vendors. Sarah and Kate were dancing by the speakers. Jessica passed around pie slices. Mark drifted from his crew, then came back to Lydia. She laughed again and touched his shoulder as he leaned in. Daniel watched it all from across the yard, rage pulsing under his skin. They weren't even pretending anymore. They still thought he didn't know. He wandered over to the grill, flipping ribs that didn't need flipping, just to stay in control. Eric's camera faced the drinks table. Good. Every touch, every smirk, every stolen look would be on record. He imagined Tom arriving in 5 minutes, walking up to Lydia, handing her the papers while the camera rolled, her color draining, Mark stammering, their secret exposed, publicly and permanently. The clock ticked to 6:55. Almost there. The yard buzzed. Music, laughter, kids yelling in the background. Lydia and Mark stood by the drinks table, fresh glasses in hand, sharing another private laugh. Across the lawn, Jessica chatted with neighbors, oblivious to what was brewing. Daniel clenched his fists. They had no idea this party was a trap, and the countdown had nearly run out. He stepped inside, looked down the street, and spotted Tom's car pulling up. It was time. The evening was warm, a soft breeze fluttering the string lights overhead. Daniel's backyard overflowed with guests, over 50 in total. Mark's guys joked about engines. Lydia's friends giggled over wine. Kids chased each other through the grass. Sophie sat by the pool, Ethan sketched in a corner, and Claire sprayed a neighbor boy with a water gun. Daniel stood by the grill, soda in hand, eyes locked on Lydia and Mark. She tossed her head back, laughing, her red dress catching the light. Mark leaned in close, whispered something, and she touched his arm. They didn't even try to hide it anymore. Jessica, still smiling, still clueless, passed pie slices to Mrs. Kelly nearby. Daniel crushed the soda cup in his palm. They thought he was blind. They all did. Eric, the videographer, drifted through the yard with his camera. Daniel gave him a nod. Eric turned the lens toward the drinks table. Good, every second would be on tape. Daniel checked the time, 7 o'clock sharp. He stepped through the house toward the front and saw Tom pull up. The lawyer exited, calm, composed, folder in hand. Daniel gave a subtle wave and returned to the yard. He grabbed the mic from the speaker setup and tapped it once. A sharp thump cut through the music. The guests quieted and turned to face him. Lydia looked up, smiling. Mark raised his beer in salute. Daniel's pulse hammered, but his voice was steady. "Thank you all for coming. It's springtime, and tonight we celebrate. Friends, family, good food, and loyalty." Polite clapping followed. Someone shouted, "Cheers!" and a few raised glasses. Daniel smiled thinly. His eyes were ice. He looked at Lydia, who stood confidently, arms folded, queen of the night. Mark stood beside her, grinning like they had already won. Daniel's hand tightened around the mic. I'd like to toast my wife, Lydia. 20 years of marriage, 3 kids, and always loyal, right, Lydia? A ripple of laughter passed through the guests, light and casual. But Daniel's voice had an edge. Some heard it. Sarah and Kate exchanged glances. Tony from the dealership frowned. Rachel didn't move. She already knew. Lydia raised her glass with a smile. Thank you, honey. You're too sweet. Daniel turned toward Mark. And to my best friend, Mark Reynolds, godfather to my daughter. My ride or die since college. A man of loyalty and character. Right, Mark? Mark slapped his chest. Always, brother. More laughter, nervous now. Faces shifted. Jessica looked at Mark, puzzled. Lydia's parents murmured. Daniel dropped his smile. He looked from Lydia to Mark and nodded toward the house. Tom was already standing at the yard entrance, folder in hand, ready. Daniel raised the mic again, his tone darker now. Funny thing about loyalty. Sometimes you think it's real. Then you learn the truth, and the truth, it sets you free. The yard fell silent. Laughter died. Drinks paused mid-air. Lydia's smile faded. Her hand froze mid-sip. Mark's grin disappeared. Daniel waved Tom forward. All eyes turned as the lawyer crossed the grass. Eric followed with his camera, recording everything. Tom stopped in front of Lydia and raised his voice for all to hear. Lydia Carter, you've been officially served. Divorce papers. Citing adultery? Gasps spread like wildfire. Whispers broke out. Lydia stood frozen, her glass shaking. She stared at the folder, then at Daniel. Mark stepped forward, face flushed. Dan, what the hell is this? Some kind of joke? Daniel brought the mic to his mouth. No joke, Mark. Lydia's been sleeping with you for years, and I have proof. The yard held its breath. I did DNA tests. Sophie and Ethan, not mine. Claire is. You two lied to me. For years. I raised your kids, thinking they were mine. A wave of shock rippled through the crowd. Lydia's mother stood up, voice raised. Daniel, what are you saying? I'm saying I have the tests, Daniel replied, his voice cutting through the whispers. Sophie, 0%. Ethan, 0. Claire, 99.9. You two wrecked my life, but I'm not giving up my kids. Not to either of you. He turned back to Mark. You'll be paying child support, Mark, for every lie, every year. Phones came out. Guests whispered. Some filmed, others simply stared. Eric panned across the scene, camera catching every stunned face, every gasp. Daniel stood in the center of it all, calm now. It was done, and they were finished. Lydia finally snapped. She tossed the folder onto the grass and stormed toward Daniel, her face twisted with rage. You've lost your damn mind, she yelled. How could you humiliate me like this? How could you cheat on me with my best friend? Daniel shouted back, throwing the mic aside. 20 years of lies. Mark lunged forward, fists clenched. Dan, this isn't true. This is insane. But his voice cracked. He sounded guilty, weak. Guests backed away, forming a circle around them. Jessica grabbed Mark's hand. Tell me this isn't true, she said, tears streaming down her face. Mark looked at her, said nothing. The guilt was written all over him. Lydia screamed again. You're pathetic! You planned this whole circus! Disgusting! Daniel stepped toward her, voice low and sharp. The only pathetic thing here is the two of you. You thought I'd never find out? Now everyone knows. People gasped. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Some turned away. Others filmed. Rachel walked over, placing a steady hand on Daniel's shoulder. Tom stood nearby, arms crossed, job complete. He didn't need to say a word. Then came the kids. Sophie appeared first, her eyes wide with fear. Dad, what's happening? Ethan followed, holding his sketchbook tight. Claire trailed behind, confused and quiet. Daniel's tone softened. It's okay, the truth came out. We'll get through this. But they didn't look reassured. Sophie stepped back. Ethan clutched his book. Claire clung to Daniel's leg. The whispers grew. Phones stayed up. Eric kept filming. Lydia dropped into a chair, hands over her face. Mark stood frozen. Jessica sobbed. Daniel picked the mic back up. The party's over, he said, voice steady. Thanks for coming. See you in court. The crowd began to scatter, murmurs rising behind him. Daniel looked at Lydia and Mark, his fury slowly giving way to something colder. Emptiness. The truth was out. Let them try to spin it. The house was quiet now. The party was over. Guests had gone. Some whispering, some stunned. Lydia left with her parents, screaming that Daniel would regret it. Mark vanished with his crew. Jessica never came back. The yard was a mess. Cups, napkins, scraps of food. Eric was the last to go. He handed Daniel the flash drive and simply said, "That was intense." Then he left. Silence. Daniel stood alone, but not for long. He had one thing left to do. The kids were in the living room. Sophie sat on the couch, phone face down. Ethan stood at the window, stiff. Claire curled in a chair, clutching her stuffed bunny. They'd seen and heard enough to know something terrible had happened, but they didn't understand it all. Daniel walked in, took a breath, and sat next to Sophie. "But we need to talk." They looked at him, nervous, silent. What happened tonight wasn't just a fight. It was something I only found out recently. Sophie raised her eyes, green like Mark's. "Was it about Mom and Mark? And the DNA stuff?" Daniel nodded slowly. He reached into his pocket, pulled out the folded DNA papers, and laid them on the table. "I had tests done. Sophie, Ethan, you're not mine biologically. Mark is your father." "Claire is mine!" Claire let out a small cry, hiding behind her bunny. Ethan turned around, pale. "What? Mark, that's not possible," he said. "You're our dad." "I am your dad," Daniel said, voice tight. "Maybe not by blood, but in every way that matters. I raised you. I've loved you your whole lives. But your mother and Mark lied to me for years." He lowered his head, then looked at them again. "I never wanted to hurt you with this, but I couldn't lie anymore." Sophie stood, voice shaking. "Are you saying we're not yours?" She grabbed the papers, her eyes scanning the numbers. 0%? This is real?" "Yes," he said gently. "I wish it weren't." Ethan stepped forward and dropped his sketchbook. "Why now? Why like this? You made it a show." Daniel shook his head. "I waited for proof. Then I had to act. Maybe it was too much, but I had to make them feel the pain they caused me. I did it for you." He paused. "I've filed for divorce, and I'm going to fight for custody, all of you, because you are my children." "Not his!" Claire ran to him, throwing her arms around his waist. "You're my dad," she said through tears. "I don't want to go with Mom. She was yelling." Daniel held her tight. Tears filled his eyes. He looked up at Sophie and Ethan. "I know you're angry. You have every right to be. But I love you, all of you. I'm not giving you up." Sophie stepped closer, still holding the paper. Then, without a word, she hugged him. Ethan followed. "You taught me everything that matters. You're my dad. I'm staying." Daniel's chest loosened for the first time in days. He reached out, and Ethan gripped his hand like a man, not a boy. Sophie leaned against his shoulder. Claire held onto his shirt. No words were needed now. They were still his. "We'll get through this," he whispered. "It won't be easy. There'll be court, maybe a new house, but I won't let them take you." Sophie lifted her head, her voice firm. "I'll tell the judge I want to live with you." "Let them try to stop me." "Me too," Ethan said. "I want nothing from Mark." Claire nodded. "I'm with you, Dad." Daniel smiled. For the first time all week, he believed they'd make it. Whatever war was coming, he wasn't alone. "Thank you," he whispered. "You're my whole world." 3 months had passed since Daniel blew everything wide open. 3 months of courtrooms, legal battles, cross-examinations, and late-night tears. Lydia moved in with her parents in Dallas the day after the party. Daniel, with the kids, relocated to a modest house in Travis Heights, a clean slate far from the wreckage Lydia left behind. Today was Judgment Day. Daniel stood outside the Austin County Courthouse, holding a folder of documents, dressed in a dark suit he'd bought just for this. Inside the courtroom, Tom Grayson reviewed the files beside him. Across the table, Lydia, stone-faced with her lawyer. Mark sat behind them, pale and worn out. Sophie, Ethan, and Claire waited outside with Rachel. Daniel hadn't wanted them to be part of this, but they insisted. The judge, an older woman with a stern face, entered the room. "Carter versus Carter and Reynolds," she announced, flipping open her folder. "Divorce, custody, alimony." Tom rose, calm and clear. "Your Honor, my client seeks full divorce due to Lydia Carter's admitted affair with Mark Reynolds. We presented DNA evidence showing Sophie and Ethan are biologically Mr. Reynolds, while Claire is Mr. Carter's. Regardless, Daniel raised all 3 children as his own, and they wish to remain with him. We're requesting full custody and financial support from both parties for their deception." Lydia jumped up. "This is outrageous! I'm their mother." Her lawyer tugged her back down and addressed the judge. "Your Honor, while my client admits to the affair, she was their primary caregiver. We're asking for shared custody and rejecting the child support claim." Mark stood. "I'll admit to being the father of Sophie and Ethan, but I can't afford support. My business has collapsed." The judge cut him off. "I've reviewed the evidence, DNA results, video recordings. Statements from the children. She paused. Sit down. She picked up Sophie and Ethan's letters. Sophie had written that Mark meant nothing to her. Ethan refused to even acknowledge him. Claire had drawn a picture of herself holding Daniel's hand. The court rules as follows, she said. Divorce granted. Full custody of all 3 children awarded to Daniel Carter. Blood relation does not override upbringing or the children's wishes. She looked over her glasses. Lydia Carter, $800 per month for Claire. Mark Reynolds, $1,200 per month for Sophie and Ethan. Visitation is permitted only at the children's request. This ruling is effective immediately. The gavel struck. Daniel exhaled. Tom clapped him on the back. We did it! Lydia screamed. You can't take them! She lunged forward before her lawyer held her down. Tears streamed as she crumpled into a chair. Mark's fists tightened. I'll appeal. I don't have that kind of money. Then appeal, the judge said flatly. But nothing changes today. Daniel didn't look back. He walked out into the hallway. Sophie ran to him, eyes wide. Is it real? We're staying? Yes. He hugged her tightly. You're mine. Ethan stepped forward, clutching his sketchbook. Good. I never want to see him again. Claire bounced next to him. Dad, did we win? Daniel scooped her up. We won. Rachel smiled from the bench. Told you you'd handle it. Time to go home. Yeah, Daniel said, nodding. Let's go home. Behind them, Lydia shouted something incoherent, and Mark cursed under his breath, but none of it mattered anymore. Daniel strapped the kids into the car. For the first time in months, the sun felt like it was shining just for them. 1 year later, everything was different. The new house in Travis Heights, small but peaceful, had become a real home. Daniel and the kids built a routine. Sophie was prepping for college. Ethan had picked up digital art. Claire, now in 3rd grade, loved anything involving glue, glitter, and paint. For Lydia and Mark, though, it was a slow decline. Not dramatic, just a steady, quiet descent. After the ruling, Lydia moved into her childhood home in Dallas. Her parents let her stay, but their tolerance came with cold judgment. Her mother, Ellen, never let her forget. We warned you about that man, she said over dinner, stabbing her chicken as if it were Lydia herself. Her father, Jim, said less, but his silence stung more than words. Her old bedroom, now a sad time capsule of trophies and childhood certificates, reeked of lavender and disappointment. Lydia had destroyed her marriage, lost custody, and was now paying support for a daughter who didn't even want to see her. It wasn't just that she lost, it was that she knew she'd done it to herself. Lydia lasted 2 more months, and she packed her things and moved into a rundown apartment in the suburbs. Cracked walls, flickering lights, a faulty elevator. 1 bedroom, a creaky couch, and a fridge that hummed too loud. That was all she could afford. Her career was in shambles. After the party, footage from that night circulated through Austin's Facebook groups. It didn't go viral nationally, but it spread just enough to kill her name in real estate circles. Oh, she's the one, they'd say, and the big listings stopped coming. Westlake clients went to Dallas firms. Lydia picked up part-time work at a tiny agency selling fixer-uppers no one wanted. She scraped by on $2,000 a month, nearly half of it going to child support for Claire. Each time the payment cleared, Lydia would sit at the kitchen table, bank statement in hand, stomach in knots. She wore the same worn-out blazer to work. Her heels clicked unevenly. She wrote to the kids, handwritten letters, long and pleading. Claire sometimes wrote back, short and sweet. Hi, Mom, I'm okay. But Sophie and Ethan didn't respond. She called once a week. The conversations never lasted. Sophie said once, You chose this, Mom, then hung up. Ethan barely spoke. Claire was gentler, talked about school, but never asked to visit. Lydia knew Daniel wasn't stopping them. It was their choice. That stung the most. She tried to reach Mark after the trial, left messages, tried to sound hopeful. We should talk. We can fix this. But he stopped answering. What had once felt like love turned out to be a disaster built on secrets. The last time they saw each other was by accident, a coffee shop in Austin. Lydia was there to meet a former colleague about work. Mark sat at the counter, hunched over his cup, eyes sunken. She touched his shoulder. Hey, how are you? He didn't look up. His voice was flat. Go home, Lydia. You ruined everything. She didn't argue. She just left and never reached out again. Her life shrank to bad wine, awkward dinners with her parents, and the echo of regret. She often thought about that stormy night in Houston, how one decision had changed everything. Mark stayed in Austin, but the man he used to be, successful, charming, confident, disappeared. After the party, his dealership took a hit. The videos circulated in group chats, and suddenly loyal clients weren't so loyal. Jessica left the day after the fallout, packed a suitcase, took their son Trey, and moved in with her sister in San Antonio. The divorce was fast, quiet. Mark stayed behind in the apartment, but without her income and with child support payments piling up, he couldn't keep it. 6 months later, he moved into a one-room rental near the highway. Mildew on the walls, floors that creaked. He didn't drink daily, but more than he used to. Most nights he walked to a bar 2 blocks away where the bartender already knew to pour whiskey with a splash of soda. Sometimes people recognized him. A pat on the back, a nod, and sometimes, "Hey, you the guy who slept with your best friend's wife?" a drunk once asked. Legend. Mark didn't answer, just gripped his glass and stared ahead. He tried to reach the kids, letters, gifts, headphones for Sophie, art supplies for Ethan. Sophie returned the package with a note. "Don't contact me again." Ethan never replied. They had chosen Daniel. That truth hit harder than losing his business or his wife. Mark lay awake most nights, listening to traffic through his window, and realized something Daniel had always known. Being a father wasn't biology, it was presence. Lydia and Mark never spoke again after that coffee shop. Their affair had been fueled by secrecy. In the light of truth, it crumbled. Lydia blamed Mark for backing out. Mark blamed her for starting it. But deep down they knew they had both chosen this. They weren't villains, just 2 people who gave in and couldn't stop. Daniel heard about them from mutual acquaintances. Lydia filed an appeal for reduced child support. It was denied. Her income didn't qualify. Meanwhile, Sophie was preparing for graduation. Ethan won a local art contest. Claire had started learning the flute. Neither Daniel nor the kids brought up Lydia or Mark much, and he didn't push. Occasionally, Claire would ask, "Do you think Mom misses me?" Daniel would pause, then answer truthfully, "I think so." It never went further. One evening, Daniel sat on the porch with a coffee, watching the sun dip behind the trees. A year ago, he thought he'd lost everything: his wife, his family, his footing. Now, he had more than ever. The kids had chosen him, not because of DNA, but because of who he was to them. Lydia and Mark had paid their price. Not in court, but in the quiet collapse of their lives. And Daniel? He wasn't looking back. He'd already won.